All right, I'm here with Mike and Michael from OB Hardware and want to talk about the nature of the store and the history and why they do what they do. So thanks for hanging out today.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Clayton.
So for everybody else, Michael and Mike, that's a good distinction.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I had been reading in the OB rag since last fall that, the 100-year store known as Ocean Beach Paint and Hardware was going to shut down. And there was a lot of discussion about that. After 100 years, people didn't know what was going to happen to the place. Next thing I know, there's a petition going around, and then announcement, new owners. And that's you two. How did that happen? Tell me the backstory. How did you come to buy a hardware store? Are you hardware store franchisers, aficionados? Do you have a history of hardware store ownership in your lineage?
No, we don't have history in our lineage. We, much like you, just saw the stories and that it was going out of business. And when I heard, I just started thinking, maybe we should buy it. Maybe we can't let it go out of business. It's too important to the town. Imagine if everybody, if you needed any screw for your house, you'd have to go over the hill to Home Depot. And not just that, that's annoying to everyone that lives in town, but then there's all the plumbers and the handymen who rely on the place, and that's like their livelihood. If you have to go 4 or 5 times a day to Home Depot, that's not feasible. So it's that important. I think it was kind of holding the town together, at least as far as I could tell. So I just had this idea that maybe we should do it, and we came in and we talked to Carl and Carolyn, who were the previous owners, and one thing led to another. And well, first thing I called Michael and said, "Hey, I got this weird idea. Let me talk to you about it." And
wow.
And so we just, one thing led to another, and
now here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
That's amazing. So the ownership, the sale took place in end of February, early March.
Beginning of March.
Beginning of March 2019. And so how did you hear about it? Did you read it, or what was how did that come about?
I actually had a buddy text me and he said, "Hey, hardware store's going out of business. Did you hear the hardware store's going out of business? You should buy it."
And why did you come to mind for your friend?
I don't know. I'm a woodworker. I'm a tinker. I'm a guy who works in the shop a lot.
It's more than that.
I
tell people that I've never known somebody that's like as right for something as Mike was for this hardware store. Mm-hmm. He's from 1920, I like to say. Nice. He plays 1920 style music. He has a 1920 style mindset. He likes the old school throwback stuff, the way things used to be, the good old days, the natural, little less technology, little more of the mom and pop, little more of the roots, the organic way that we used to live. I feel like Mike embodies that as much as anybody I know. And he was in this transition to woodworking, which isn't the easiest thing to monetize. And so it just felt like this perfect synchronicity between him, his lifestyle, where he's going, what he's doing, and this need that our town has to keep the store alive. So
well, I love that. There's a piece of the town that is being preserved. 100 years is what a legacy to get the torch from,
Yeah.
And even just the classic nature of your preferences. I compare it to like there's hardware and there's software, right? And the world is all softwared out, right? At the same time, I'm noticing culturally there's like a big draw back to shop, and hand made products and things that take time, and it seems like that's a fit. Like the timing for this to come into new hands seems culturally right, especially with that kind of dichotomy of hardware and software being in balance with one another. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've always kind of had a philosophy that whatever everyone else is doing, that's probably not the thing to be doing.
Yeah.
If everyone else is doing it, it's probably not what I should be doing. So I guess that goes along kind of with what you're saying. Well,
and so how did the petition change things and maybe sway you? To explain what that was and how that functioned as a kind of
yeah, it certainly helped. There was 750 people who had signed that petition at the time, and
what was it? There was a call out to action.
Yeah, it was. Someone had started a petition online on change.org that said, if the hardware store can be saved, I pledge that I will shop there, at every opportunity. I don't know how they worded it, but essentially that. And there were 750 people in the town who said that. There was this big push that everyone really wanted it to stay. So, I mean, that's certainly not the reason we did it, but that was
some validation. That,
sure,
yeah,
that was like, hey, this may not be quite as crazy as it sounds, you know?
That's nice. And it's just what a good boost and pledge from the community at large, too.
Absolutely.
Now, what I've noticed coming in here is, I always shop here as well. And yes, it's a nightmare to leave town, for one. Number two, we like to support local business. And three, that's why we're doing what we're doing with OBtv, is to highlight the heart and soul of local business. And that's why you guys fit so well. When I walk into the new hardware store, I feel a lot of the classic touches have been preserved, but then I also see a newer aesthetic that's maybe a little more fresh and curated. Tell me about a couple things that people would notice when they walked in that may, the subtle nuances and the, right in your face items that have your signature to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The first one was the gardening. We built out, there was a little bit of a gardening department here, but it was pretty minimal. So we moved that right up front. When you walk in, like you said, it's kind of front and center in your face. We brought in the San Diego seeds, local organic seeds. They do them from their home. Another, like you said, just that small family-owned business thing. And so you walk in and you now have life that you're walking into, and that changes the feel. Shortly after that, we brought in the piano. That adds that whole lively piece of energy with still that old-time kind of classic feel of the old-school piano.
Too, huh?
Yeah. And then we just started upgrading some of the inventory, adding a little more diversity, more options, but a few more, better options. They were carrying a lot of the plastic stuff. We started changing out some plastic for some wood, for example. In our cleaning supplies, we added some natural cleaning supplies. So just adding to what was already here and just kind of increasing what we were carrying. It was a good place to start. So it's only been a few months, but we're seeing a nice improvement to the bottom line here.
I love that. And then as soon as I walked in, the seeds and all the gardening gear it caught my attention. Just the freshness of it too, and again those more raw components to it, that they aren't plastic and they're wood and metal, and they're also just sharp and durable, and that speaks to what you're doing. Mike, for you, what's something that maybe that you've added or will be adding this year to the store that represents some of you?
Sure. Well, the next kind of move we want to make is it's kind of like a bit of a domino effect, but essentially the important part being to move the register around and to kind of get it along this wall so we can open up the window so people, when they walk by, can actually see in the store, as opposed to seeing just the counter, which has been the way it's been for quite a few years now. So I think when we open that up, people are going to go, oh, look, a hardware store. Like right now it's, there's the sign, or you can kind of see in the one window, but I think once just opening it up, making people feel welcome, just cleaning up kind of the clutter that grows from
decades
from decades of being a hardware store. Exactly.
So I heard rumors of a stage in the window too.
Well, we're going to be using the front window section as a staging area, yes, for inventory. When inventory comes in, it's always kind of a problem. It's kind of everywhere. We get a big shipment in and people have to kind of walk around it, which is not ideal. So we're going to put a little staging area up there in the corner where we can use all that. That'll be next to the piano. So
if something were to happen.
So if something were to happen on that stage other than inventory,
somebody might want to play music.
Right,
there
we
might be an
probably
opportunity.
Wouldn't stop that. And it really, I mean, I think that brings the community together, and people like to hear music. That's the main reason I brought the piano in. Is everybody's, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have some song in them that they remember from childhood, or it just reminds you of something. And then those people go home and they talk about OB hardware, almost for sure.
I've never heard of a hardware store that has such well-rounded, holistic character to it. So that does speak of OB. In that regard of neighborhood and hardware and hands-on, Michael, you were talking about an event that you plan on hosting with building cars.
Yeah, the OB Derby we got coming up this summer. Just an opportunity for parents and kids to come together, build some cars together, come down to the hardware store and race their cars against the other families, the other kids in town that decided to build a car. We're adding that OB flair where cars will be judged on not just their speed, but their creativity, their individuality, their paint job, all those nice, unique flair and individualized pieces that you can give your car. So it's just a chance to get parents and kids kind of doing something together that's based around that do-it-yourself concept that we want to start embodying here in the hardware store.
So many kids will be making stuff with their hands, not with their thumbs.
Yeah, that's the theory.
Not the screens.
Crazy concept,
Imagine
right?
that, huh?
Like in real time and slow and stuff, and maybe they even hit their hammer on
Wouldn't
their
that be
finger.
nice?
Kid might get a
have to-
bruise. Somebody might get a cut.
And you guys are taking it to the level, dude. Who'd have thought? So you both are residents of Ocean Beach. Why do you live here?
I don't know. It's kind of a hard thing to describe. I guess we all kind of know what it is, but it's that uniqueness about OB that and the community feel, the uniqueness, the fact that I can be whoever I want here. You know.
Being in real estate, people ask me about similar, what kind of people live here, and it's like either you get it or you don't. There's not a lot of middle ground, so you kind of like waffle. It's like you're either in it or it's just not for you.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh man, there's so many levels to it. If I had to boil it down to a few of the big ones, there's a level of consciousness here that you don't have everywhere. People kind of get it, like you said. The mom and pop thing's pretty cool. The fact that I can walk everywhere. Like most things, it kind of comes down to the people probably. It's a lot of really good people around, which kind of goes back to that consciousness thing I was speaking to. It's just a one-of-a-kind, unique place, though. It's special.
I refer to it as the last great beach town,
at
least in Southern California.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's dear to my heart from
sure.
that. And that was what attracted me to spend some time with you, is because it's obvious that you do too, and that's what's going to keep, OB. In wrapping up, you're talking about some of your bigger values of community, some of the why behind the store, but even at a deeper level, like even if you didn't have OB Harder seems like an expression of who you are. What's the bigger narrative? Why do you do what you do at that core level that you would if you were having any store? You know what I mean? What is it that you do?
It's a cool question. For me, it's an element of goodness. Like Mike said, he called me up when he got this idea. I think he knew that I'm always kind of keeping my eyes open for ways to give back, to help bring a little more good to the world. I was telling them I did a charter school before this that was based on kind of a holistic approach to education. And it was miserable. There was parts of it that were so brutal, dealing with the bureaucracy. Hardware store is so different than that. It's so pure. And it's kind of that back to your roots of what every house needs, right? It's the oldest store in town. It's a foundational aspect. And so when you love a town the way I think we care about OB, and you have an opportunity to preserve a 100-year-old store, it's just a lot of goodness in that. So for me, it was kind of based around that. I wanted to support Mike. I felt like it was a perfect fit for him. And then there's also an element of it there's an opportunity for the store to become a community space, a community center. And that really resonated with me. It makes a lot of sense to turn our oldest store, that's the hardware store, into a place for people to come together to do some cool projects, build some cars, have some celebrations, listen to some old music, get some things they need to fix up their 100-year-old house.
I know, perfectly, huh? It's a perfect pairing with these old beach homes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you think about it in that context, it's like this place did build the community.
Yep.
This is the backbone of it. And I think there's something so significant we commented on about as community builders, y'all own a hardware store. And there's and the roots of that thing and the foundation of the town being this place, and you're able to facilitate that on these multidimensional levels.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. What about you, Mike? What's the gravy?
Well, kind of like I was saying earlier, or like you were maybe alluding to with the hardware and software thing, and that in this world we've kind of drifted away from working with your hands, and we've drifted away from these elements of a hardware store, like being able to do things yourself. And I just find that to be a huge loss the world, and so it's not only in the hardware store, but I kind of try to embody that, and everything I do is kind of remind people of what things were like and why they were like that way. And just because things are new doesn't mean they're bad, and it certainly doesn't mean that they're necessarily good. I think we need to take everything on its merits, and I think, you know, I should say the way, you know, people always say we've been doing it that way forever, and that's never a good reason to do something. But I always argue that that's never a reason not to do something either.
For sure.
So, you know.
So I'm seeing depth in just the rooted nature. There's like this human element that runs deep as we've kind of ditched so much of where we come from. Mm-hmm. This anchors us into some of that purity.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wisdom in it. We're not necessarily a wisdom culture anymore. And this does anchor us into some depth. So I love that. I love it even how it's expressed in your music.
Yeah, yeah.
And taste in woodworking.
Sure, yeah. I try to preserve that as much as I can. I think it's real important.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're moving back toward that wisdom culture, though, especially in places like OB.
Well, no, that's well said. Absolutely. I'm sure everybody would agree with that. So thanks for sharing some of the depth of OB Hardware and who you are personally, and sharing that with me and sharing it with anybody that's watching this, the town, the people that come to visit. Our goal is to, like I said, keep OB and help promote local businesses and the community that celebrates it. So, Michael, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Clayton.
Thanks for joining us for OBtv, and keep in touch. Stop by OB Hardware. What's the best way? I mean, this is, sometimes I ask for websites and all that sort of thing, but this is you show up.
Best
You guys
way to
be
come to
here.
the store, yeah.
Where are you located for those of you that maybe don't know such a thing?
We're not Newport.
We're on 4871 Newport, right between Cable and Sunset Cliffs.
So right as you turn on Sunset Cliffs, you're right there.
That's right.
Cool. Well, we look forward to paying attention to some of the events that you're hosting and bringing some friends and family along.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Clayton.
Take care.
Pleasure, bud.